you had stepped into the quiet parish church of Diest on a cool spring morning at the beginning of the 17th century, you might have seen a small boy kneeling in the dim light of dawn. His knees rested on cold stone, yet he didn't move. His hands were clasped tightly, his eyes lifted toward the tabernacle with a focus far beyond his years. The world outside was waking, carts rolling, merchants calling, children yelling, but inside the church, this boy was still, peaceful, and lost in prayer. If you had asked who he was, someone might have whispered, "That is John Berchmans. He loves God more deeply than most men twice his age." John Berchmans did not know he would one day become a saint. All he knew, from the earliest years of his life, was a desire to be close to God. Born in 1599 in the modest town of Diest, Belgium, he was the eldest son of a poor shoemaker and a tender, faith-filled mother. The Berchmans family did not have much, but what they lacked in wealth, they made up for in love and devotion. They prayed together every day. They worked hard, and they taught their children that faith was not merely a Sunday duty, but a way of life. Even as a small child, John had a sense of spiritual sensitivity that was rare. His thin frame, soft features, and quiet nature made him seem fragile, but his inner world burned with intensity. He would wake before sunrise to attend Mass, arriving at the church so early that even the priest was surprised to find the boy waiting at the door. He served at the altar with a reverence that made adults weep. He learned the prayers quickly, memorizing them not from obligation, but from love. But holiness did not shield him from hardship. Other children teased him, calling him the little priest. They laughed at his devotion, mocked his seriousness, and sometimes shoved him aside in the streets. But John refused to respond with anger. He simply forgave them, smiling quietly and continuing on his way. His gentleness eventually melted their cruelty. Even the roughest boys in the town began treating him with respect. At home, poverty pressed on the family. They struggled for food. Bills weighed heavily on John's parents. When he expressed a desire to study for the priesthood, worry filled the household. How could they pay for books? How could they spare him when another pair of hands could help put bread on the table? But John insisted, not with stubbornness, but with quiet confidence. He took on small jobs, served priests, ran errands, and studied late into the night by candlelight, driven by the belief that God was calling him. At age 13, he moved to Mechelen to study under a cathedral canon. The transition was brutal. The long days of study exhausted him. He often went hungry. His bed was hard, the room cold, and the loneliness heavy. But he offered it all to God. Every difficulty became a sacrifice. Every success became a prayer of thanksgiving. It was during these years that he met the Jesuits, the Society of Jesus. The moment he encountered them, his heart stirred. Their devotion, their discipline, their dedication to education and mission work, all of it resonated deeply within him. He wanted to join them with every fiber of his being. His father, however, hoped John would become a diocesan priest and stay closer to home. The Jesuits would take him far away. But John, delicate yet determined, respectfully explained his calling. In time, his father relented, offering his blessing through tears. At 17, John entered the Jesuit novitiate in Malines. Many young men performed great penances, whipping themselves or fasting for days. But John chose a different kind of sacrifice, one hidden from the eye. His penance was fidelity to the ordinary. He obeyed every rule with love. He fulfilled every duty with excellence. He swept floors as though preparing a throne room for a king. He studied with wholehearted attention. He prayed with total devotion. and he never sought praise for any of it. One of the treasures of his spiritual life was the rosary. He carried it everywhere and prayed it constantly. His fellow novices often saw the beads slipping quietly through his fingers as he walked, waited, or worked. His devotion to Mary would one day become one of the reasons countless people would seek his intercession. Now, before we continue deeper into the journey of this extraordinary young man, this is the perfect moment to remind everyone watching. If you're finding inspiration in the life of Saint John Berchmans, please take a moment to like, comment, and subscribe. It truly supports the channel and helps stories like this reach more people. And if Saint John Berchmans is your patron saint, perhaps you're an altar server, a student, or someone striving for purity, let us know in the comments. I'd love to hear your connection to him. After the novitiate, John's spiritual life deepened further, but his earthly life became harder. Not long after he joined the Jesuits, tragedy struck his family. His mother fell gravely ill. Letters traveled slowly, and by the time John received word of her illness, she had already passed away. The grief pierced him deeply. She had been his greatest spiritual influence, the one who taught him to pray, to trust, to love. But even in sorrow, he found strength through faith. He believed she was now closer to God, and therefore closer to him in spirit than ever before. Yet more sorrow would follow. 2 of his younger siblings also died in the years that followed. Each loss struck his heart, yet he bore these sufferings with serenity that astonished those around him. He wept, he mourned, but he surrendered everything, joy and pain, into the hands of God. Seeing his discipline, intelligence, and virtue, his superiors soon decided to send him to Rome for advanced studies. This was a remarkable honor reserved for only the most promising young Jesuits. But it was also a difficult journey. He walked long miles, rode uncomfortable carriages, and often went hungry during the trip. When he finally reached Rome, he was overwhelmed by its beauty and its demands. The Jesuit college was filled with brilliant minds. The academic expectations were tremendous. Reading, writing, and memorizing complex theological texts. He slept only 4 or 5 hours most nights. His fellow students admired his discipline but worried about his health. He often ignored his own exhaustion out of a desire to serve God with every breath. When gently advised to rest, he would smile and say softly, "There will be time for rest in heaven." But John's health was fragile. The Roman climate was harsh on him. His lungs weakened. He began coughing, a cough that lingered. Some nights he struggled to breathe. Still, he continued, refusing to complain. One day in 1621, during a particularly intense public disputation, a challenging academic debate required for his studies, John pushed himself past the limits of his strength. After presenting his arguments with brilliance, clarity, and humility, he collapsed. His classmates rushed to him, lifting his limp body from the floor. Doctors were summoned, but nothing seemed to help. Fever consumed him. His breathing became ragged. As he lay in his small room, the scent of sickness in the air, his friends gathered around his bed. Despite the agony in his body, his eyes shone with peace. He whispered prayers. He held tightly to his rosary. He asked for his crucifix, the same one he had carried since childhood, and kissed it gently. When asked if he feared death, he replied in a voice barely above a whisper, "I go to my God." He requested 3 things in his final moments: his crucifix, his rosary, and his rulebook, symbols of his love for Christ, his mother, and the Jesuit way of life. With these sacred objects pressed against his chest, he breathed his last, on August 13, 1621. He was only 22. His death shook the community. A promising young life extinguished too early. Yet what followed revealed the depth of his holiness. People who prayed near his body reported sudden spiritual consolations. Some claimed physical healings. Word of his sanctity spread beyond Rome. Years later, one miracle in particular propelled him toward sainthood: the instantaneous healing of a young girl in Louisiana who was near death. When a relic of John Berchmans was placed upon her, she recovered so quickly that doctors could not explain what had happened. This miracle, among others, confirmed what those who knew him had already sensed. God had worked powerfully through this gentle, humble young man. Today, Saint John Berchmans is honored as the patron saint of altar servers, students, young people pursuing holiness, and all who seek purity and faithfulness in everyday life. Churches, schools, and families around the world bear his name. He left no great writings, no dramatic sermons, no grand miracles during his lifetime. What he left was something rarer, a life that showed how holiness can live in the smallest tasks, the simplest actions, the most ordinary moments. He proved that sweeping a floor with love could sanctify a soul, that studying earnestly could be a form of worship, that kindness offered quietly could draw hearts closer to God. His story is a reminder to all of us that sanctity is not reserved for the extraordinary. It is found in the daily yes we say to God, again and again, with a humble heart. John Berchmans lived a short life, but a luminous one. A life that whispers to every generation that greatness is not measured by grand achievements, but by the love with which we live our simplest days. And in that whisper, across centuries, he gently invites each of us to follow the same path, the path of ordinary holiness that leads to extraordinary grace.